Bring in somebody that follows Nvidia for a living. That is Chris Rolland, senior analyst at Susquehanna Financial Group. Chris, we appreciate you joining us. You've been listening to what we've had to say. You've had some time to kind of chew on the numbers. What's your take on the quarter and whatever else you've read or heard?
Yeah, I think there's probably a knee-jerk overreaction. These numbers were just fine. The quarter was perhaps a little light, but the guide was absolutely fine. Also, Colette, the CFO, has already been speaking to the China opportunity. They now, once they do get official requirements around China and what they can ship, they expect to do another 2 to 5 billion in H20 revenue to China. So put that on top of the Q3 revenue guide, which was just fine.
These revenue numbers, and I want to really highlight this for the audience so that everybody around the table knows this. Annual revenue for Nvidia was about $17 billion 4 years ago. About 4 years ago, I'm looking at Capital IQ, about $17 billion. It's now estimated to be what, $150 billion, Chris?
Yeah, going higher to 200 billion total.
So
yeah.
17 billion to 200 billion in 4 or 5 years. I don't know if we've ever seen that. Nvidia's added $1 trillion with a T in market cap this year. That's 10 Starbucks or 5 Qualcomms worth of value for one company in 8 months. How long can that trend, that growth rate, continue?
It will slow, but the ChatGPT moment in 2022 changed everything. And the value has accrued to Nvidia, who is powering everything, at least 80% of everything AI right now. And so that will slow, but 250 billion is a reasonable expectation for next year. And we'll be working on 300 billion, we think, in the years after.
Yeah, so let's just talk about that deceleration we're talking about. Again, these are high-class problems, right? So last year they were growing earnings and sales, over 100% a year. This year it's going to look like, maybe 55% or something like that. Even just taking this guidance right here, it's not likely that much more. Maybe China does that, maybe in the last quarter or so. What do you think, though, Chris, when you think about, let's say, expectations for 33% earnings and sales growth next year, trading about 30 times that? Is this stock starting to look cheap on consensus, or do you think consensus is too low? Just curious to see where you're at, because I know a handful of other folks who think that consensus earnings and sales is way too low.
I think eventually we will hit some sort of a wall when it comes to this deceleration. I don't know if it's next year, but eventually we're going to have a flat year and everyone's going to freak out and think that the PE multiple might even be too high. But it's been a meteoric rise. I'm not getting off the train just yet. There's still a lot of growth here, whether you're talking about hyperscale CapEx. We've seen incredible improvement, but there's probably still another 20 or 30% to go there over the next few years. We have sovereign ahead of us. We have China ahead of us. Yep. There's still some opportunity here.
Well, speaking of China, Chris Rolland, stay there. We have some news coming out of the call. You might have heard this, you might not have, but I'll give it to our viewers and listeners as well as the desk. So forgive me for looking down. Nobody wants to see the bald spot, but here you go. Nvidia could ship $2 to $5 billion of H20 chips in the third quarter if geopolitical issues subside. This is coming from the conference call and the CFO of Nvidia. Nvidia CFO said that some China-based customers have received H20 licenses, but Nvidia has not shipped to them yet. And the U.S. government, as we talked about, that 15% tax, whatever you want to call it, the U.S. government has not codified requirements for Nvidia to give it 15% yet of China sales. In other words, Nvidia is fine, I guess, paying the government, Chris, but they're not really sure how it's going to work. But forget about that. 2 to 5 billion of H20 sales in the third quarter. How would that stack to maybe what? I know there's no official numbers for China in Nvidia, but how would that go against your expectations?
Yeah, first of all, that's not in their official guidance, so that would be on top.
This is new news.
Yep. And then secondly, if they did get that requirement, I believe they could start the supply chain up and they would do better than that 2 to 5. In fact, they probably could have done 10 if they really had that supply chain going. So there's still upside here from China. Probably could do 25 billion a year to China if they wanted to.
Chris, the last line you said before Brian jumped in with news was you're not getting off the train yet. I think the most helpful you could be to viewers right now is what would be the red flag? What's the signal for when Chris decides to get off the train?
Let's see the hyper scale CapEx. Let's see that hit a wall first.